Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Vince Ganzberg with the United Soccer Coaches, and also in the room is Ian Barker. And our special guest today is Ryan Needs. He is currently with Sheffield Wednesday, but he actually played college soccer at my alma mater, Bethel College, now Bethel University. So from a former pilot to another, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Ryan's going to talk a little bit of what he does for Sheffield Wednesday, and he's also going to share his screen, and then he's going to go through some set pieces and kind of what he does on a weekly basis for him. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to share it. Vince, you got any questions whilst we're going along? Interrupt me. Fire some questions over. We can discuss anything, or you want to query how does this relate to someone else as a college coach or youth team coach? Fire them away. So I'll kick it off. And what I need to do here is a screen share.
Yep.
So you get my.
Yep. There we go.
Yep, you got that. Perfect. Well, you've just introduced me really there. And as you said, I'm head of tactical analysis at Sheffield Wednesday Football Club, formerly of Swansea City, Leeds United, Middlesbrough and Birmingham. So I've got a bit of experience behind me there. Prior to that, again, you mentioned it, I was at your alma mater, Bethel College, Indiana. And that's really where I got into analysis. A lot of the American sports are very analytical driven. And it was kind of new in soccer at the time, especially over in the UK. So I took that experience with me, implemented it in Swansea and then throughout my career. Currently hold a UEFA coaching license and an MSc in performance analysis. And some of the things that I want to share with you specifically today is my special interest in my set plays. I'm going to share a little bit on a blueprint on how to create an attacking set play and how you implement that into your training model. And I'll go straight into that, actually. So in terms of the set play methods, as I mentioned, during my time out in the States, that's really where my passion was driven for set plays. I actually went to an Indianapolis Colts game with your son, Zach Ganzberg, and still today I haven't got a clue about any of the rules or the scoring methods or anything like that of the NFL. But during the game, at the Colts game with your son, I just remember looking at every play, and in terms of relating that to soccer, it reminded me of set plays, corners, wide free kicks, whatever. And I looked at the principles of those plays. If you just look at the quarterback, the quality of the delivery, again, that appeals to an attacking set play in soccer. So I started taking concepts and principles and studying a little bit of the NFL plays there and taking those concepts into sort of my set play methods. Once I share that blueprint with you, I'll show you how you can implement that into your set play routines, which I'm sure you coaches will be eager to know that. So firstly, I just want to stress the importance of set plays. So here's statistics on the EFL Championship this season to date. Obviously, we're having a bit of a hiatus from the league at the moment with what's going on in the world, but I just want to show sort of the importance of set plays and how much they contribute to a team's goals. So, for example, if we look at Millwall, almost 55% of their goals come from set plays, and as well as Cardiff City, 52%. So there's a couple of teams there, all have their different purposes. Some are pushing for playoffs, some are trying to avoid relegation, but every team has their own purpose in terms of utilising set plays, and they're important to the contribution of their total outright and goals. Even if we look at the bigger stage then, so here's a statistic from the previous World Cup. Over 40% of goals were scored in the group stage by teams at the 2018 World Cup. And I think England were probably the main beneficiaries from set plays in the group stages. But this is at the highest level with the best players. So it's just emphasizing the importance of set plays there. And this is where my passion really, really lives. I've probably spent the last 5 to 6 years studying set plays, different types, attacking, defending, how it's trained, different systems. And I've tried to utilize that into my own methodology. So on that note, in terms of the importance of set plays, recent developments, Brentford and Leeds United hired a set play coach. I think most notably Liverpool have hired a throwing coach, which almost brings the question now of a lot of teams with the disadvantage of their financial status is, why would you spend £15 million on a striker to go get you goals when you can get 20 goals from within your team with a strict methodology, with a good blueprint and a training method of your set plays? So you've got 20 goals within your team, and you've got to enhance that, train that, and bring it out of them. And that's where I really got into creating an attacking blueprint. And this is my blueprint for creating an attacking set play. Firstly, I analyze the opponent's defensive setup. Secondly, I'd identify the opponent's defensive rules within their system. And that's the important thing that I think gets disregarded a lot when coaches devise a set play. They might look at the opponents and then they'll create a set play, but without really understanding why the opponents are set up like that. What are the rules? Who defends the short? What is the role of the free man? If you put extra attackers in, what is the role of the near space? And I think it's important to identify these rules when you're creating your offensive set play, because you might create something that eventually doesn't work because they might have a subsequence to defending that. So it's really important that you establish the rules of the opponent. Thirdly, then, I'll establish the strengths and weaknesses of the opponent's setup, whether it's a height advantage or a height disadvantage. And there's a bit more detail into that, which I'll later share. And the fourth part of my blueprint is creating that attacking routine. And you've got to challenge the opponent's rules and also exploiting their weaknesses, but also take in mind the strengths of the opponent's defensive setup. So first, I'll take you into analysing the opponents. And this is a pretty cool quote from Sun Tzu, The Art of War. It's a book I've read, and I apply a lot of those concepts to Chinese art, from Chinese war methods into opposition analysis. And if you know the enemy, you know yourself, you need not to fear the result of 100 battles. And that's a great quote in terms of analysing an opponent's set plays. So you know the enemy's defensive setup, you know their rules, you know their strengths and weaknesses, and that's how you can know yourself then. That's how you devise your own set play to exploit that. So into that, how would I analyse the defensive setup? Well, firstly, and quite bluntly, are they a zonal setup? Are they man marking, or are they a hybrid system, which is a combination of both? Do they leave attackers upfield? What is the starting position of the goalkeeper? What is the organisation of when the ball is cleared? Do they look to clear their lines? Do they look to catch you offside? Do they look to counter-attack? So these are a couple of concepts that I would look at in terms of analysing the defensive setup of an opponent. And everybody's different. I just think these four are the main parts of an analysis that I would look at, whereas Vince, you might look at something different and analyse in a different way. So these are just things that I would look at, and I feel like they're beneficial to me in terms of understanding the opponent's setup. And I just want to give you an example. So we looked at Stoke City for an upcoming fixture. So in terms of analysing their setup, we found that they're a hybrid system, and hopefully you can see the video there. So what you'll see is that they're a combination of marks and zones. They'll have a free man and a near space which I'll highlight, and the rest of the players will man mark. So there's your free man, and the role of him was to anything over the near space, he'll attack the ball with freedom. And it's typically a profile of the player, their strongest header, their strongest attacker of the ball, most aggressive. Second zone they had was a near space zone. And his rule was to prevent the flick, protect anything going in the near post. The rest of the defenders would man mark, except they would leave a 2v1 short play. So in terms of identifying the rules there, it was for me to find out and establish who defends the 2v2. If I played a short ball there, who would defend that? So these are little concepts that I would look at. Again, the analysis, you see the free man attacks the ball. And I'll also look at the second phase. You see that they try to clear the box there and leave the opponent's attackers offside. So once I've done that analysis, that's just one example. We'll look at a sample size of the last 30 corners. And we'll also get data from that. So in terms of Stoke, I found anything over that near space zone, they were actually quite strong in terms of getting the first contact. So for example, between the 6 and the 12-yard area, essentially, they had an 85% chance of, or success rate of getting the first contact on the delivery. But most notably, anything into that near space zone was 30% or 25% success rate of getting the first contact. So with that analysis, the subjective analysis and the objective analysis, then I start looking at the opponent's rules. and I just touched on a couple whose responsibility is to defend the short play. So can we exploit them with an overload, with a 2v1 or 3v2? Who defends the taker? So I'll look at these rules in terms of Stoke and try and establish their rule there. The second rule I'll look at is the role of the free man. So I've identified he's probably one of their strengths. And in the hybrid system, if I put a sixth man in, will he actually go and mark the extra attacker or leave him free? Or will he allow a player from the edge to mark him and perform a split mark on the edge? That's a rule that I need to identify. Does the goalkeeper come out, or does he stay in his line? And do the defenders remain with their marker even on the second phase? At the end, no, they don't remain with their markers, but what they do is that they clear their lines, and we're at potential risk of a counter attack. So these are the rules that I want to establish, and without knowing these rules, then it'll be impossible for me to create an offensive set play. Moving on to that, what are the strengths and the weaknesses of the opponent? So how quickly does the opponent set up and organize their team? And that's important, and especially important for me to know, especially with knowing that they allow a 2v1 situation for a short play. Because if they don't set up quickly, then I can quickly play and exploit them with an overload. The next strength is, does the goalkeeper punch, or does he try and catch difficult deliveries? This might be a strength of the goalkeeper, whether he's got height or an aggressive stance on set plays. If he comes and collects deliveries and they look to clear the box, we're at detriment of a counter attack.
Ryan, do you see like a trend? Like, do some goalkeepers punch more than others?
I think it depends. I think it depends on the setup, Vince. Typically, you'll have tall keepers that will. There's a keeper for Nottingham Forest, Pantilimon, who was like 6'8", and any deliveries that went in without any pace, he would pluck them out of the air. But I think it depends on the setups. So within a man marking system, I think there's a bit more ownership on the goalkeeper to come and collect deliveries, especially if they don't have a free man. Whereas in a zone setup, I think there's a bit more responsibility on the zones to protect the goalkeeper and protect any deliveries into the 6 yards. So I think there's also a tactical aspect to that rather than an individual attribute. But further strengths and weaknesses I would look at there, Vince, would be the height and the heading ability of the defenders. So just referring that back to Stoke, in terms of their man markers, they all possessed a height advantage over us, and they all possessed a heading ability of, if they cleared the ball again, they're clearing the box, which was a threat. And the marking ability of the defenders, they're actually good markers as well, very disciplined. So these were the strengths that I found of Stoke. Again, just to highlight that, the free man was aggressive in his role, so any ball delivered central or far, you would attack it. The man markers possessed a height advantage over us, so even a successful block on the free man, it would still be difficult for us to get the first contact. And even the statistics showed that. And there's also a high chance that the free man or man markers would clear the delivery and exploit us by offside or counter attack. So taking that information, the strengths in Stoke, I put that to one side, and then I also look at, well, what are the weaknesses of them? So obviously I don't want to devise a set play that is going to benefit them in terms of their strengths by delivering far. So we look at the weaknesses of them, and statistically, they had a very low rate of first contacts in terms of the near space zone. And just deeper analysis, just looking at another game against them. This is their fixture against Middlesbrough. So I look again, and I see their near space zone, which is James McLean. He's in a deep positioning. And when I look at the space that he forfeits in front of him, I'm quite suspect of that. So his role, his duty, his rule is to prevent the flick there. But I'm looking at him positionally, and I think he's allowing a lot of space there. And any type of delivery that goes in with pace, I'm not too sure he can react to it quick enough, especially looking at anything on his blind side there. So I'll just let this video play out. Again, their setup is true as well, as consistent. They leave the 2v1 overload, or 3v2 if you play it short. But look at that delivery. I'll just take it back there. And even though James McLean gets the first contact, he's allowed an attacker to get in front of him in the zone, and he's missed the ball by millimeters. But in terms of his heading ability, which is probably down to his positioning, it's not a convincing header for me. He just heads it back out for a set play. So I'm a little bit suspect of his positioning and to his role within the team there. So for me, weakness is in the near space zone for them. And again, another example, if you took a quick one, they still allow the 2v1 overload. So once I've got the strengths of them, which was the height advantage, the man marking advantage, the ability to clear the box, I take that into consideration with their weaknesses, which was they're vulnerable at the near space in terms of the position of the near space zone, and they're also vulnerable at a 2v1 short play. So in terms of creating my attacking routine, these are the concepts that I actually, going back, I mentioned about studying from American football, NFL, is that firstly, the delivery is everything. So in terms of me choosing the delivery on creating a set play, do I go with an in swing? Do I go with an out swing? Do I go with a driven? I'd look to implement blocks. Would I look to block the free man? Would I look to block a man marker? The creation of space. I'd also look at the timing of our movements. How would I integrate that? And a smoke screen as well. Of course, the execution is important because you want the end result of a shot at the end of this play. But I'll also consider the defensive balance when I'm designing my set play here. And what I've got here is an example of taking the information from Stoke City and devising a set play. So out on the ball, I've got a left footer. And in terms of looking to exploit them, we'll have a signal of one hand being raised. So this is when we know we're going to play this set play. We've established that they'll leave the 2v1 situation. So I'll look to have that as an option. But more importantly, I'm going to look to beat them on a flick here. So in terms of the near space, he's going to give us that space there. So we position a flicker just on the blind side of him, and he's going to look to attack that zone when the signal is risen. I'm going to put a block on the goalkeeper just to add added anxiety to the goalkeeper and prevent him from attacking or punching any crosses in. And I'm going to position my attackers far. I'll have two on the edge, and I've got a cover back for the second phase. Upon any delivery, I'm going to ask the player that's out short to recover to the edge just to secure that second phase if we don't play the 2v1 option. And if I just go back to creating that routine in terms of that play, then delivery is everything. So the in-swing is going to go in with pace. We've already identified that the near space zone already gives you that space. So by putting it in with a lot of pace and a lot of speed on the ball, he's not going to have a lot of time to react to that. In terms of putting blocks into my set play design, I'm only going to put one on the goalkeeper. One, to put a bit more anxiety on the goalkeeper when the delivery is coming in, but also that'll attract a marker with a blocker. And remember, they look to clear the box quickly and catch you offside. So if I can take a man marker back as deep as possible, that helps me on the second phase. I'm not going to put a block on the free man, which might have been a question of yours then. Why didn't you block their strongest attacker of the ball? There's not necessarily a need for that in a flick routine, because if we get the first contact and we flick it, because of the short distance and less reaction time, it'll be impossible for the free man to react and clear it. Almost turns into a lottery on that flick. In terms of the creation of space principle, that's already given from the near space zone. And we're going to put the flicker to hide in his blind side. So that area is already vacated. The time of the movement will all depend on the cue. And that will also serve as a signal for what play we're going to use, but most importantly as a cue. So as soon as the hand goes down, that's the cue for the flicker to move from the blind side and attack the space where the ball will be delivered to. In terms of a smoke screen, we'll have the 2v1 option. So the opponents might be second guessing that we're potentially going to play short play. And also a second smoke screen I got in there is that the attackers are actually positioned far. So the free man, other man markers, goalkeeper might anticipate a delivery that's going to go central or far. So they're my two smoke screens in that. In terms of the execution, that purely comes down to the profile of the taker. So on the right-hand side, I'd look at a left footer taking that to in-swing it with pace, and on the opposite side with a right footer. What's the profile of the flicker? Well, that's also important for the execution there. With him hiding on the blind side, he's got to have a very quick, sharp acceleration over a short distance to be able to get in front of that space before the space man attacks it. And then lastly, I look at the defensive balance, because I never want to be exploited without a defensive setup. So I'll keep a cover at the back, whilst the short option will recover to the edge to secure the second phase. So I've looked at the detail. I showed you my principles and with the justification of how I design this attacking set play. So how did that come out as against Stoke? So when we played against them, their setup was consistent with what we analysed. There was a free man. There was a near space zone, who again was in that deep positioning, giving us that space just in front of him for the flick, and also the 2v1 short play as an option. So what you see here now we've seen their setup. We'll now signal that we're going to do the flick play, which was one hand, as you see there. And the cue for the movement is when the hand comes down. So now our flicker has got himself in a position, into the blind side position. And I'm just highlighting the space that the near zone is allowing us there. As the hand comes down from the taker, there's the acceleration in front with the 3 attacking the far. So in terms of the analysis, we were quite clear in what they were going to do. We identified their rules, their strengths and weaknesses, so we understood the opponent, which helped us understand ourselves in terms of attacking and set play, which we feel would be beneficial and we could get some joy out of. And we're quite fortunate to get that out of in this example.
So Ryan, how long? So it looks like we're getting into training, but that specific play, how long did you rehearse it? How long did they rehearse it?
Well, that's sort of within your time constraints. We typically, which I'll move on to now, implementing the set plays into your training methodology, is typically we would practice it the day before the game. Just because of the workload, the physical demands of the players, is that we'll have a physically demanding week forward 4 and 3 days before the game, whereas we'll taper that off on a match day -1 where we'll do walkthrough routines, and that's usually the best time to practice set plays because you can walk through. The players are out on the pitch with less time and it's less physically demanding. But that's not saying within your training methodology, Vince, that you can implement that at any time within the week. So, for example, just highlighting that match day -1 where it's a less physically demanding day and you can do your walkthroughs of your set play routines. That's great there. But what if you wanted to implement them throughout the week? You might not have time to go through every single set play on match day -1. When I talk set plays, I don't just talk about corners and wide free kicks. I'm talking central free kicks. I'm talking throw-ins in the defensive, middle, and final third, as well as deep free kicks, goal kicks. So, and also kickoffs and all that attacking and defensive. So you might want to spread that out sporadically throughout your week. And I just want to give you an example, and this might apply to anyone, college coaches. If you're working on 4 days before and you've got an intense session and you're working on small-sided games, you can still implement a set play within your small-sided games. And I'll just show an example of that. Typically, if you're doing your small-sided game, a 5v5, a 4v4, whatever it may be, and you're doing 4 bouts of 4 minutes, typically these plays start with a coach. The coach will throw the ball in and they'll look to play from there 4 minutes, and whatever your desired rules are within that play resumes. But you might have a throw-in, for example, a routine throw-in that you might want to work on, but you don't have time to do it on a match day -1. But you might want to do it a pose as well, and you don't want to do a pose on match day -1 because of injuries and contact injuries. So how could you implement that into a small-sided game? Well, this is an example of a throw-in of ours where we'll use a midfielder to create a block, and we'll ultimately have a free man who receives it, and we'll look to switch the play. Just a simple technical throw in from us there. But of course, we'll need opposition to practice that. But we can implement that into a small-sided game where rather than the coach serving the ball in, why not a player? And you just perform that routine. And if it's a consistent routine then, and you've got a different stock book of it, then you can pick that play. And then play begins from that, and then you play your 4 minutes, and if the ball goes out of play, then you can restart from the goalkeepers just to keep the time ticking. But that's an example of implementing the set play within a technical or a small-sided game. And just another example. So player begins from a routine throw-in. You've practiced it. You practice it in a pressured environment, game-like environments. You're able to get your blocks in, your movements, creating spaces. Some of those principles you've looked at that you can't get in walkthroughs. You've integrated it within your training model, and it almost comes second nature to the players then, that you're implementing it within different moments of the game, whether it's a possession drill or an out of possession drill or a transition drill. And I just want to throw another example. This is defensive. So I've shown you some attacking set plays, but you could implement your defensive setup in a warm-up, Vince. So for example, let's just say you're defending in a zonal setup. You've got 4 stations and the coach can command a setup for a station. If he shouts number 1, they get into the defensive setup as follows. Then he shouts number 2 and they get into their wide free kick setup. again, he shouts number 4, and you're getting back into your corner setup. And what you're doing, you're just introducing this as a warm-up.
Mm-hmm.
And again, another wide free kick. Well, how many stations you want, it just depends on your defensive setup and the variations there.
Brian, a couple of quick ones, if I can,
what
real
that
quick.
does, Vince, is that your warm-up is themed. So if this is a day that you're working on set plays, then this is a warm-up will then lead into your next part of your session, which might be opposed set plays or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Secondly, it increases concentration and alertness. So if you relate this to a game day, that's what you want exactly from your defending set plays. Concentration, alertness. And by shouting out these commands, players will be concentrating. They will be alert. So you're adding a little bit of game-like situation there, even if it's unopposed.
Yeah.
And it also challenges the team to set up quickly. So on match day, if that is something that you need to work on, you having issues with your defensive setup on a match day where your team's not setting up quickly, a little exercise like this can work. And it's up to you. It's up to you how quickly you want to go from those commands to the stations to make it more demanding or less demanding. It's entirely up to you in terms of the workload.
Yeah.
But those are just a couple of examples how you can integrate that into your training model.
It's wonderful. So Ryan, I think go ahead and finish up. But we have a few questions on the chat.
Yeah, definitely. No. This is just to say.
Ian has one too.
Yeah, we just talked about. I showed you some of the stats, and set plays make up 20 to 55% of your goal contribution throughout a season. So just emphasizing the importance on that. And then secondly, you must have a set play blueprint. I'm not saying that mine is the only one or it's the best one, but it's what works for me in terms of analyzing an opponent, establishing their rules, establishing their strengths and their weaknesses. And again, once you've got that blueprint, you've got to practice them. It's important, especially if they contribute to your goals. They can win you games. They can also win you leagues. So yeah, I just want to fire it over to you.
Yeah, and keep your job too.
Ryan, really worth our time going a little bit over because it's very detailed.
I apologize for that.
No, not at all, because everybody stayed on. So very detailed, but also very clear. So that I think that's a real positive, that there's a ton of analysis, but quite easy to follow from a player point of view.
Yeah.
A couple of quick questions. Paul said, basically, if you didn't do the flick on the Stoke, would you then have gone to the 2v1? Was that probably your second one?
That's exactly what it is, yeah. So in terms of that 2v1, I mentioned about a smoke screen. So I've got two options in that set play. We go for the flick, and let's just say it comes off first time. It's not going to come off for a second time because they're probably anticipating it because you've got the same setup. But what I've done is that I've designed a smoke screen that I've got a 2v1 option to fall back on. So again, if I play the 2v1 option and I've already done the flick, that then becomes my smoke screen. So I'm always giving myself two options within the set play.
Okay. And the other one, a gentleman called Zubin. Do you have set plays for every restart, even down to like a kickoff? Like, does the manager want a way to start the first half?
Absolutely. Kickoffs is, again, you're probably not going to score from a kickoff. In saying that, Brentford almost scored against us in a kickoff, very attacking team from kickoffs. But I think from a mentality standpoint as well, it sets out your stall. So you're not necessarily going to score the goal, but mentally approaching the game, you're sending your team a message. You're sending your own team a message as well. Whether if you go direct and you win a throw-in or a corner from it, you're applying an attacking intent. Or if you just got a routine where you play back to your centre-back and you look to build up play, you're applying an intent there. And you never know how teams defend a kickoff. We've taken kickoffs where a team has immediately high-pressed us, and without any sort of guidance or play offensively, we end up giving the ball away, or we end up kicking it away for a pointless throw-in. So, we look at all aspects, especially defensive throws, middle
throws. At a
throws.
minimum, corner kicks, free kicks, you've got two. One is your go-to, one is your smoke screen.
Yeah.
Do you get into threes and fours at any point?
Yeah, well, typically we'll look at, I don't want to give too much away on this, but we'll look to get 2 or 3 consistent set plays, which is important for every team because you need the consistency. With the consistency of training it and applying it in games, that's where you'll perfect the set play. But we'll also throw in a different variation, and that might depend on the opponent because they have a different setup every game to every opponent. So every team has a different weakness. Every team has a different strength in terms of the defensive setup. So yeah, usually we'll throw one extra different set play in, but I strongly recommend having consistent set plays just for the consistency of perfecting the technique and the timings of the movements and the other principles.
Magic. Thank you.
Ryan, we've taken way too much of your time, and you've been gracious enough to give us your time, especially late at night. And you have a beautiful wife and a new arrival coming, and you need to take care of them. So I just want to say thank you very much for taking your time. It's wonderful.
I appreciate it. I mean, it's a great initiative what you guys are doing with the online platform, especially with what's going on in the world right now. So thanks for keeping us all engaged.
So Ryan, I'm gonna get asked if you shared your presentation minus the video.
Yeah.
Is there any way you can share that, and I can share that with anybody that wants it on this webinar?
Absolutely, it's not a problem. I can ping that over to you, Vince.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, well, thank you all very much for watching. Tomorrow, by the way, we've got Leslie Gallimore at noon Eastern Time, and we've got Dave Simeone, sure to be entertaining, at 4 Eastern Time. So hope to see some of you there. So thank you very much. Be safe.